The Colts have been linked to one of the most polarizing players in the entire 2023 NFL draft, but we're going to hear from someone who's actually been covering him daily for 2 years. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp, which connects you with a licensed therapist who can take you on that journey of self-discovery from wherever you are. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. I am Jake Arthur, and he is Zach Hicks. You know the two of us from HorseshoeHuddle.com. I'm your resident credentialed member of the media for the website, and then Zach is the most notorious film guy in the market. And just apologies ahead. I know I sound bad, but don't worry, because I also feel bad. So we're gonna hang in there today. So today we're going to give you our final Will Levis episode pre-draft, because if they take him, we are obviously going to do more Will Levis content. So I know a lot of you have been clamoring for that, so we'll bring it to you today. He's actually got some of the most buzz surrounding him in the entire draft right now. A couple key factors that we're going to get to here in a second. And then we're going to actually bring you a conversation we had with Lance Dawe, who covers Levis and Kentucky sports for Locked On Kentucky, because a lot of us have just, been following Levis for the last year, 6 months, whatever. He has been there every day covering him for the last 2 years. So probably a good guy to talk to on that. Well, Zach, here we go. Probably the most smoke flying right now about any prospect, as far as I can tell, is probably Levis. Just going off FanDuel right now, our partner, they've got him as the best odds to go number 2 overall at -120. Now, it doesn't say number 2 to Houston. It just says number 2 overall. And honestly, like, Vegas is willing to do that, but I think he's most people's QB4 for a while. Maybe the NFL feels differently. I don't know. What do you think about that?
It's actually really fascinating to me because, and again, we've done a lot of episodes on here, so this is not me just trying to disparage Will Levis. Like, I like Will Levis a lot as a prospect, but everything I've heard from other agents, from some people who are connected with more NFL stuff, is Levis is not going to go in the top 10. That's what I've heard throughout the whole draft process, that it's not that he had a bad draft process. It's just, Anthony Richardson is such a freak athlete that he was always going to win the draft process. And Bryce Young is such a smart quarterback who is always going to win on the whiteboard compared to everybody else in this class. I heard Will Levis has just been fine, is what I heard throughout pretty much the whole process. And then recently it's now become, this is QB2. This is by far and away QB2. You're going to have teams like the Texans and the Colts and Vegas all coming up trying to get him. And it's like, where did this come from? Like, it feels, because it started with the Colts. Like, every national guy is linking the Colts to Levis, which we'll talk about here in a second. Like, the Colts are going crazy for him, but now it's buzzed its way all the way up to the Houston Texans. So I don't know what's been going on these last 2 or 3 weeks for Will Levis. I don't know if he's knocked down the door for every one of these teams and demanded them take him or something, or I have no clue. But Will Levis has done something in recent weeks to get a lot of buzz, to get a lot of people on his side. And it would be interesting to see him go to, I think he's a talented quarterback. So it doesn't shock me to see him go this high. Again, it's just kind of interesting to me that it's climbed this much. I mean, Tom Pelissero writes his yearly article on what he's hearing from teams and stuff like that. And then even in there, he had Levis as QB4. And I think one of the GM quotes in there, one of the AFC scout quotes or something like that, was there's a lot of rumors about him slipping in this draft, because that's what most of us had heard. But by the time Pelissero posted the article, now it's about Will Levis going second or third or fourth or whatever. So he's definitely climbed a lot in recent weeks. And whatever he's done behind the scenes, good on him.
Yeah, I think Levis's representation is putting in that OC right now because
Hey,
I don't.
yeah, but like Will Levis, like he's a good guy.
Yeah.
He might have been winning teams over. Like I'm not saying it's not happening. It's
Uh-huh.
just somebody's doing a lot of work and someone's really fallen in love with him or it's all smoke. I have no clue right now, but yeah, he's doing the thing right now.
Yeah, one reason I think a lot of it is smoke is because it's happening at the same time that CJ Stroud is now dropping.
Yeah.
Stroud, who 3 weeks ago a lot of us assumed was probably going to go number 1 to Carolina before it was set in stone, basically, that it was going to be Bryce Young. So, what's really changed other than how people are talking, But yeah, it's interesting because you mentioned, number 2. He's far and away number 2, according to some bettors. And then there's all the Colts stuff, so I don't know. Chris Ballard the other day, without saying Will Levis, he was like, I don't know where all this is coming from, but it hasn't come from me. And the Colts, I've worked in that organization before for 3 drafts, I think. They're very tight-lipped when it comes to the draft. Like, it's very hard to get anything out of that draft room, basically, for who they like and things like that, because it's intentional. They don't want that type of stuff to get out. So.
Yeah, I'm shocked by the amount of reports we've gotten from national people linking the Colts with Will Levis. Like again, I don't deny it. The Colts like Will Levis. Like I think they probably do. Like he's the type of prospect that Chris Ballard and the Colts would like. But it's like we're getting Todd McShay coming out with articles saying like, I've talked to people around the league and the Colts buzz is so real for Will Levis. Like, I don't even know what they would do if Will Levis wasn't there. And then you're getting Jeremiah talking about it. Peter Schrager being like, oh, all these people called me saying, link the Colts to Will Levis. And it's like, when have you guys ever got that much info on the Colts? Like Jeff Saturday was the betting favorite for the head coach thing all the way up until Shane Steichen was announced as the head coach. Nobody had the DeForest Buckner trade. Nobody had the Yannick Ngakoue trade. I know right before the 2018 draft, I know a lot of people are coming out with revisionist history now, but there was a lot of Roquan Smith to the Colts at 6 buzz going up before that. Like, I just don't know where this is all coming from. Them all feeling so confident about one thing. I've seen a lot of things and articles linking Will Levis to the Colts because of Peyton Manning, like the Peyton Manning camp stuff. But like Peyton Manning's maybe the 20th most important voice in that organization right now. So yeah, I'd be shocked. I mean, again, I wouldn't be shocked if he's the pick at 4. Like he definitely could be the pick, but so many national people getting this info and then not really having info on the Colts liking other quarterbacks. It's just weird to me. It's very suspicious, especially with a team that we know is notoriously pretty quiet and not very leaky, especially when it comes to draft stuff.
Yeah, for me, it's just like all the certainty that people are speaking with. It just seems weird. But next, we're going to bring you our chat with Lance Dawe, who covers Kentucky sports and Will Levis for the last couple of years over at Locked On Kentucky. But first, this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. This year has been crazy busy for me personally. I've made some big moves to try and clear my plate. I always kind of feel scattered a little bit. But I've actually found that I'm most effective when I have a bunch of irons in the fire. Otherwise, I just have too much downtime, essentially. Getting to know yourself can be a lifelong process, especially because we're always growing and changing. Therapy is all about deepening your self-awareness and understanding, because sometimes we don't know what we want or why we react the way that we do to things until we talk things through. BetterHelp connects you guys with a licensed therapist who can take you on that journey of self-discovery from wherever you are. I've not personally been in therapy, but I have seen just how a lot of people close to me have grown leaps and bounds or been able to kind of cope with some of the issues in their life. So from an outsider's perspective, it definitely looks worthwhile to me. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Discover your potential with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.com/lockedon.
And thanks for making Locked On Colts your first listen every day. Every day is tomorrow on the show. We've got experts who cover the Arizona Cardinals and Houston Texans on deck to tell us what a trade up with their team and the Colts might look like. So make sure you guys are tuning into that. You're going to set your alarms. You're going to be there, and we're going to love to see you guys there. But now we have our exclusive interview with Lance Dawe of Locked On Kentucky right now.
All right, ladies and gents, today we've got a special guest who's going to tell us more about Will Levis because he's actually covered him on a day-to-day basis for the last couple of years, unlike those of us who are kind of playing catch-up now. It is Lance Dawe. He is the editor for Auburn Daily over on FanNation, and he is also the host of Locked On Kentucky. So who better to tell us a little more about Will Levis? Thanks for joining us, Lance.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Happy to be here. Talk a little ball about where Levis could potentially fall. I know you guys are right now one of the definite favorites to potentially land his services.
Yeah, no doubt. It's smokescreen season, though, so who really knows what's going on until the draft actually gets here. But, Levis is kind of he's arguably the most polarizing player in the draft, at least among the quarterbacks, because he's kind of the guy you either love him or hate him. You compare him to Carson Wentz, this and that. From your, down the middle, level-headed perspective, though, you've seen him play for a while. What's your assessment of him as a quarterback and maybe his fit at the NFL level?
I think that the comparison in terms of just his ceiling has been, Josh Allen, because of physically what he has looked like throughout college. In his first year with the Wildcats, Levis looked really, really good running the ball. This past season, offensive line scheme kind of held him back from really showing that athleticism a little bit more. I think that when you look at him physically, he's got the traits of an NFL QB. Absolutely. He's physical. He's hard to bring down. I think that in terms of his arm strength and just his ability to play through injuries, I mean, he's what you want. But when it comes to the mental side of things, the decision-making side of things, I think there are a lot of inconsistencies. I think that's the best word to use there. Obviously, he's a college quarterback. You're going to see inconsistencies in all of them. Nobody's perfect. But after the scheme change from Liam Cohen to Rich Scangarello for Kentucky, things kind of went downhill. And part of it was because of the offensive line. But with Will Levis, I'm not saying that he's stupid. I'm saying that, when it comes to analyzing the game, making your reads, putting the ball where it needs to be, just being consistent. We've not seen a ton of that out of Levis, and we got to see him kind of regress in his second year. In terms of translating to the NFL level, I mean, he's got the tools physically. He can make it happen. It's just whether or not he gets the right development and the right time with the right people to kind of get him to unlock that full potential. So can he translate well to the NFL? Absolutely. Like you said, he's a bit of a wild card, very polarizing player. To me, I think that he can be somebody that finds very good success in the NFL in this jump here to the big leagues, but he has to have the right people around him in order to make him succeed.
Yeah, and one of these guys, I mean, no one's really a finished product when they get to the NFL, but these guys who really kind of need, that leadership and coaching around you, like you mentioned, to get you to the next level. When you have talent like Levis does, that's undeniable. The work ethic is usually the thing that gets you there. Mm-hmm. Now, from what I've been able to study about him, the guy is interested in improving himself and working on his craft. I guess he went up to Canada at some point, worked on his mechanics and things like that. So as far as what's his work ethic like? Is he that guy that is just laser focused on getting better? Like, as far as all that goes, should there be any concern about him reaching his potential in his own efforts?
As far as what we heard out of him at Kentucky, I very rarely heard anything negative about what he was doing around the team. Now, obviously, you're getting to see some concerns being brought to light here as the draft gets closer, as you're seeing for a variety of prospects, certain people, we won't name them here, but just complaining about Will Levis and his personality, like you said, his work ethic, his character. I very, very seldom found any sort of issues with Mark Stoops' program, much less Will Levis. So as far as what he does from a work ethic perspective, I can't sit here and tell you whether or not he's somebody that's going to go out there and grind and just, be that type of person. But I never heard anything negative, never heard anything bad about him. Obviously, you see the post about him, talking about his physique and talking about how he's worked on himself. A lot of people have brought that under criticism. I would just sit here and say if he's proud of what he's done up until this point and he's trying to get somebody to draft him, and maybe that's not the move you want to make there, but I think that as far as to answer your question, his work ethic goes, I've not seen or heard anything to give me a reason to say that he does not put effort into it, or he's lazy, or he may not be somebody that an NFL franchise would want to invest in because of that.
I'm glad you mentioned the picture thing, because I spoke about it briefly on one of our shows. I think that got a little overblown because it's one of those things people like to pile on when they already have issues with a guy. As far as my understanding was, it was like, he was injured and he lost some of his physique and everything during the season.
Yeah,
he's like, look, I've got it back. I've worked myself back up into shape. So I thought that was a little overblown. But one more thing I've got for you here before we head out. So when he was at Penn State, he was kind of, a wildcat guy, ran the ball a lot. You saw more of that in 2021, but he was obviously hurt in 2022. We've seen him in different systems and everything. I guess this will be a two-parter. Initially as a rookie, let's say he's playing as a rookie day one. How do you think would be the best way to use him to get him on the field and accentuate his strengths? And then what would be the best way in general for him as an NFL quarterback? Like you mentioned Josh Allen earlier. Is that the kind of style you think that an NFL team should use him in?
I think that as long as he's healthy and the system he's in, once you start to work with him through it, he looks comfortable. Absolutely. I think you let him kind of try and become a little bit of that improviser type, try and see if you can make him, not necessarily force him out of the pocket on his own, but kind of design plays to get him moving, kind of get him to not just showcase that arm, but also showcase his legs as well. So, but also at the same time, Jake, I think that, again, to go back to what I was saying earlier about the inconsistencies, not just on long throws, but really, to be honest with you, it's on shorter ones and intermediate ones as well. You've got to find ways in an offense to get him comfortable with that. And I think that having an NFL offensive line is certainly going to help. But again, I agree with you. I think that the Josh Allen route of trying to get him to utilize his mobility, his athleticism, just to see if it's there, I think is probably the first move. Because in 2021, I mean, this kid was really tough to bring down against some really solid programs. So absolutely, I think kind of making him, force him to see if you can force him into that type of role, I think is the first move there because of his physical gifts. Past that, again, I go back to, it's just working in some of those consistencies. I don't want to sit here and say that the comp for the style of system that Indianapolis is going to want to run with him is like the Jalen Hurts Philly type of route where they just run the ball over everybody and they run quarterback draw every other play. But I think that you could get to a point where it's similar to Allen, similar to Hurts, where he's a big-bodied guy, tough to bring down. If he's healthy, you run the ball with him. You play a little hard-nosed football. And maybe that's something fans in Indianapolis, you tell me if they've seen it in a while, but that may be an interesting style of play to pursue with Levis.
Yeah, you haven't really seen it a lot here. I guess a little more with Carson Wentz was probably the closest thing, just stylistically. But I think you're about right. He really feels like a tough, athletic, West Coast rhythmic style of quarterback to me. So thanks again to Lance for joining us. IU Hoosiers people, I know it's sacrilege for you, but I know our state does have a lot of Kentucky fans in it. So make sure that you check out Lance and Locked On Kentucky for everything. Thanks again, Lance, for joining us.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on.
And coming up, guys, we're going to react to everything that Lance said right there in that video, in that interview right there for you guys, and also give our final thoughts on Will Levis and if we think he could be the perfect quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. All right, Jake. So first off, I just want to say congratulations on that video, on that interview there. You were phenomenal. Great job. Great job.
Thanks.
But talking Will Levis, again, we've had a lot of videos on here talking about him recently. I had the one with Mark Schofield last week. I had the one with Jonathan Hagler a couple weeks ago where we really broke down his game and talked about him as a quarterback. And a lot of things that Lance said, I think, kind of mirrored a lot of the things that we said in those videos as well. So I love that we had Lance on here to give that perspective. I don't love the Josh Allen stuff, but I get it. I don't think he really projects super well as a Josh Allen type, but I get it. I was actually really curious when he said the mental side of things, though, because I get it. Some of the decision making was not great, and it just didn't look fluid at all in his 2 years there at Kentucky. Nothing really looked fluid or comfortable for him, whether that was his first year as a starter in 2021 and whether the poor play around him plus his injury this past season. At the end of the day, he's still a 24-year-old quarterback who things never really looked comfortable for him in college. So yeah, I think Lance kind of gave some really good insight on that stuff there. But I was pretty intrigued by the mental side of things that he was saying there. Don't you think, Jake?
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's one known thing, the questionable decisions in his game. He's just one of those prospects where he gets those long stretches of solid play. And when you project him to the NFL, you're like, well, is this what we can unlock all the time? Or is he just going to be herky-jerky all the time?
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that Lance didn't really try and sell on
Right.
him. He gave an honest opinion. There are issues both physically and mentally with him. But I mean, if you put him in the right system, then things can go well. I was also interested in, one area I think anyone would be able to sell Levis is the work ethic and things like you've mentioned on here. Anytime we've talked about him, he's done extensive work on his mechanics and things like that. So again, interesting to not be like a slam dunk around Lexington that he's just like this workaholic, I guess. That doesn't mean he's not. But I would have thought that would have been one of the bigger selling points, really.
Yeah, I mean, again, at the end of the day, there was never anything bad said about him, like Lance was saying there in that interview. Like Levis was a hard worker. We know that how the teammates feel about him. We know how the coaching staff feels about him down there. Yes, obviously, it didn't go the way that everybody down there in Lexington wanted it to go. That they expected maybe a closer run at the SEC championship game or something like that, but they just didn't have the talent around him, and things just never got put together. But yeah, I really don't have any concerns whatsoever about Levis, like off the field or mentally or anything like that. You brought up that dreaded video again, that or pictures, I guess, on Instagram or something of him shirtless, where people like Colin Cowherd and stuff were calling him out for it. It's like, let the kid be happy with himself, with his progress. Like, come on. Like, let's not turn this into what it's not. But yeah, no, I think that was a really enlightening interview and just the kind of the cherry on top of all of our Levis coverage this off season. But getting to our overall thoughts on Levis, Jake, if the Colts came out of this draft with him at 4 or in a trade up to 3 or something like that, I don't know how it's going to go down. I'd be whelmed. I'd be kind of like, I could see a realistic path for him being a good NFL quarterback. He's just not really my preference in this class. Again, I think there are traits there. I think mentally he's there. I think character-wise he's there. I just have some concerns on film where I'm looking at this guy where he's going to be a 24-year-old starter on day one this season. And there are a lot of areas where he's just behind the curve. And I'm like, what can he be? I know the traits are great. I know the traits are awesome. But usually at 24 years old, you kind of know what your NFL quarterback is. By 24, you know that Joe Burrow is going to be a stud. You know that Mitch Trubisky's not it. Maybe sometimes you get like a Daniel Jones where it's a little bit older than that, but you typically know what these guys are by 24, 25. Will Levis comes in, you're not knowing what he is at 24 years old exactly. And that's not like a deal breaker, but it's just like an older prospect with concerns and didn't really like grow every year in college. It's just tough for me. It's tough. And especially in a class where the 3 guys ahead of him or the 3 other guys are so young and so intriguing as well.
Yeah, I think that definitely hurts him because, again, different systems in the last 2 years, different schools overall. I will say, like, although it's a buzzword around here in Indy, anytime you mention Peyton Manning, I do like that he's kind of got the seal of approval from Peyton because he's not just going to give that to anyone. To me, that checks off work ethic and potential.
He won't give that just to anyone, but he gave it to Adam Gase. So
that's true.
I like Peyton Manning. I think Peyton Manning's awesome, but I don't know. I don't think I go to the appeal to authority too much with Peyton, although I get why the Colts would because he's Peyton Manning, but like every time I hear the Peyton Manning seal of approval, I think of Adam Gase. I just think of Adam Gase. But yeah, no, he was a counselor at the Manning camp, and I think Daniel Jones was a couple years ago as well. So, I mean, take what you want from that,
Hey, Adam Gase would have been awesome anywhere else if we had another Mount Rushmore quarterback and like perennial all pros all over the offense and an awesome defense. Yeah. Don't besmirch him.
Right. But no, I like Will Levis a lot. I really think he can be a good West Coast type quarterback. If you get him in a Shanahan scheme or get him into like a Patriots offense type of scheme where it's heavy play action and kind of exploiting defenses off the play action and the power run game, I think Will Levis can be a plus starter. I think he can be like peak Ryan Tannehill. Like peak Ryan Tannehill was a top 10, top 8 quarterback in the NFL for like a 3-year stretch. Like that's a really good quarterback right there. And I think Levis can be there. And I think Shane Steichen could adapt to that and kind of bring those elements to the Colts. It's just I see easier fits with the other guys. And I see younger players with oozing potential that, have only kind of scratched the surface, where Levis, like I've seen a lot of Levis and it's just never really been there. Like it hasn't really gotten to where I want him to be. And again, I think he can be good. But overall, if he's the pick at 4, I feel kind of whelmed. I kind of feel whelmed, and that's fine. Like, it's not like I'm feeling upset, but like, I'd rather feel excited than kind of whelmed on draft day.
Yeah. For me, I think it would just be like, okay, they finally have the quarterback. Let's go. Like,
yeah,
whatever is going to happen next, let's do it. But like you said, for me, when I picture Anthony Richardson, I picture just a ridiculously dangerous run game with him and Jonathan Taylor. Like, how do you stop that if both of them are at their peak? And then with CJ Stroud, I see just a world of potential. He's athletic enough to move around and by time with his legs and improvise. And he's obviously just a pinpoint accurate passer. So, I'm like you. I would be whelmed.
Yeah.
It would feel like settling. I'd be fine with it because, again, they have their quarterback. There's paths for him to succeed. He's a good prospect. But just the futures I see with the other two guys are just kind of too much to ignore.
Will Levis just feels like Chris Ballard said at the beginning of this offseason that they have a rare opportunity picking at 4th overall. Very rare opportunity to get not just to only get a quarterback, but to get a quarterback of either immense potential or like right now you can play him and they're going to be pretty good. That's a CJ Stroud or an Anthony Richardson. You have that rare opportunity to potentially get a rare quarterback. And a guy like Will Levis just kind of, it screams more like outside the top 10 quarterback, like a teens quarterback where you're taking a shot on this guy and he could be really good. Like there are traits there and stuff like that, but just, I don't know what the selling point is in the top 5, because if you're a big traits guy like me, I love traits. I bet on traits every day of the week. And if I get burned, I get burned. You have Anthony Richardson, who's younger and has better traits than Will Levis. If you're looking for more pro ready, and maybe a guy who's more accurate already, who can run these systems. Yes, Will Levis has experience in an NFL system, but CJ Stroud is already a more accurate quarterback. He's better with his eyes. His decision-making is better. Why would you go Levis over Stroud? So it's just, it's a hard sell. Like if he's the only guy left, like sure, take him. Like I think he can be good. But taking him over one of those two guys, to me, I just don't know what the selling point is. Unless he's just absolutely killing it behind the scenes and the other guys aren't, which could be the case. Like we just don't know that insight behind there. But, if all this smoke with the Colts and Will Levis is because behind the scenes stuff, cool. But if it's on the field stuff, I kind of question it a little bit because I don't really know I just don't know what that selling point is.
Yeah, I'm thinking, honestly, I think the ideal landing spots for him would be Tennessee or Houston. Again, they're right outside the top 10. I could see those being really appropriate fits and a appropriate stock, I guess. The word escapes me, but I think that's good. Him going 4 or just inside the top 5 seems a little rich compared to the other guys.
Yeah. No, I think Houston makes a lot of sense. I think New England makes a ton of sense in the middle of the first round. I think Minnesota makes a lot of sense if they were to come up for him. Like, I think there are places where he can be a really good quarterback. Again, they can make it work in Indy. I just don't see the fit as strong as it is with these other guys. But that's all we have for our Will Levis talk today, guys. And thank you guys for making Locked On Colts your first listen every day. Everydayers, remember, tomorrow we're going to be talking about what these teams could do in front of the Colts, what the Cardinals could do, what the Texans could do. We're going to have an expert on from each team to talk about those two squads. So remember to set your alarms because you do not want to miss those shows. And if you don't already, follow Locked On Colts at Locked On Colts at Jake Arthur NFL and at Zach Hicks 2 on Twitter. Also subscribe to Locked On Colts podcast on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. We love your ratings and reviews, and we'll see you guys bright and early tomorrow.